to demonstrate how to block a sweater that has been knit in pieces that I plan to seam. And I almost always block the pieces before I seam them because you get much nicer seams that way. So I start with a schematic of how the sweater should be. For example, this is a drop shoulder saddle Aran style sweater. This is my schematic. I want the body to be 21 inches wide, 19 inches long. The sleeves are 15 inches wide, 20 inches long with a 2-inch cuff, and they're 7.5 inches at the cuff in width. So what I do is on my blocking board, I actually measure these out. For example, I put these pins on here, and these are 19 inches apart. These are 21 inches apart, so I already have it marked out. And I took a string and put it around the pins just so you can see the area involved, because it makes it very easy to see where the piece needs to fit. Now I've done the same thing for the sleeve. Here's the sleeve, and it is 20 inches long, 15 inches across the top, and 7.5 across the wrist with a 2-inch cuff. So let's take our pieces and see how they fit here. They're dry, I haven't blocked them yet. I've gotten them wet, I'm just getting ready. This is my preparation for blocking. So this is a sleeve, and it fits in this space pretty well. There are some little adjustments that need to be made, but that can be made when it's wet. Here is the body. And it fits pretty good. Also, some little adjustments to be made. You can see the ribbing pulls in, which is to be expected. That's the job of the ribbing, to give some shape at the bottom. So this is what I do prior to getting the fabric wet. The next step is probably the most important part of blocking, and that is preparing the fabric to go into the water. And I do that by folding it. I lay it out on the blocking board first, just like I have, and then I fold it. And I fold it in such a way that after it's wet and I've blotted it in the towel, all I have to do is lay it out here just like this and open it back up, and it will fit to the dimensions. The wet part is the part where you can actually easily distort your fabric. It stretches very easily, and you can end up with something that is really out of shape. So the next step is putting it in the water. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm just filling my sink with room temperature water. And you want to put the water in the sink before you put the fabric so that you don't risk felting it just by the water hitting it. I'm not putting anything in the water. You can use additives if you want. It's personal preference. I like to just use water. All my pieces folded up, and I'm just setting them in the water. And I'm just going to press them down, and you'll see air bubbles come up. I'm not agitating it, I'm not pushing it up and down, I'm just pushing down one time, and I'm gonna let the air bubbles come up. You can hear them probably. And you can see the lighter areas here, that has not absorbed water yet. See where it's absorbed water, it's darker. The wool absorbs water at different rates over the wool. It's very interesting. Like right here, it's dry. It's not wet, so it's lighter. It kind of becomes translucent when it's wet. And it takes about 20 minutes for it to become completely saturated. So I just want it to get under the water right now and to stay when I lift my hands. There's some air bubbles in there. And I'm going to let it sit in the sink. See how that's under the water and it's still light? This is light here. This is light. After 20 minutes, those will all be dark like the rest of it. So I'm going to let it sit here in the water for 20 minutes. Okay, so now they've been sitting in here for 20 minutes, and you can see the spots that were lighter are all dark now. Very good. So we're going to take this top piece and pick it up, supporting all the weight so it's not hanging, and we're just going to squeeze excess water out. We're not wringing it, just squeezing it. Then we're going to move over here to the towel, and we're going to lay it out like this. And we're going to take the towel and just roll it up and squeeze it. And you can feel the water coming out. And I'm going to do that with the rest of the pieces. So we've brought the towel to the blocking board, and I actually have both the fronts in this towel and the back, but we're going to start with the back, and I'm going to take it off the towel carefully, move the towel, and I'm going to put the front and open it up. Get it upside down. And not stretch it. We just want to open it to fit to the lines. This is the part that is super important because it's very easy. You can see that it would be very easy to get it big. And I'm just patting it, getting it to make it fit within the lines. You see this excess fabric here, and there's excess fabric here. So I'm just patting it, and it allows the stitches to get into their final shape. Sometimes you have to pat a lot, sometimes not so much. And there's going to be more manipulation happening here, because you can see some of these lines are zigzaggy, and I don't want my sweater to have zigzaggy lines. So first I'm just going to get the general shape by patting it, not rubbing it, not stretching it. I'm just gently patting it, and that allows the stitches to find their position. It's getting better. See what a difference? Then I'm going to make sure these lines get straight. I'm just gently touching it. You don't want to felt it. This is non-superwash wool, which is my favorite. I prefer it. It blocks much nicer than superwash wool. It's looking pretty good. And sometimes I have to get down and look at it from an angle to make sure those lines are straight. You may be able to hear my grandchildren in the background. Not only do I knit, but I babysit. Like I'm sure many people do. By the way, this is knitting that I have embroidered. And I will be having videos on how to embroider your knitting in the near future. That's one of the next things I'm going to be doing. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to take a final look. Now, it doesn't dry instantly. It takes a while, so you can always come back and tweak it if you want. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to block the fronts. Now, the term blocking actually sometimes is misunderstood. Some people think that blocking actually means that you're going to stretch the fabric. And blocking, that is not what blocking means. Blocking means you're going to get the fabric wet and set it in its final position and allow it to dry that way. See, I'm still tweaking it. I always see more things to tweak. The longer it sits here, the more things I see to tweak. So blocking means getting it wet in some manner. It could be steaming it, spraying it to get it wet, soaking it like we did. What we're doing now is called wet blocking. And then putting it in the position that you want it to be. And in the case of cables like this, you do not want to stretch the cables out because they will be forever flattened. And part of the beauty of, or the big part of the beauty of cables is their three-dimensional effect. So that's why cable fabric stretches very easily when it's wet, but you don't want it to stretch. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work with the fronts. Here's one front, and what I do is I lay them right over the back because they're going to be the same configuration. I use my same pin out, and I'm going to want 1 inch in the middle for my button band that's going to be added on. And like I said earlier, I always block before seaming. You get much better results with your seaming if you block the fabric first. This part hasn't been completely embroidered. You can see this is the pre-embroidery part. This is looking good. Again, you want your line straight. Because however you leave it and it dries, that's how it's going to be. And I'm going to put the other front on here. And you can see these want to be bigger, and they would be if I were allowing them. If I hadn't marked out on my blocking board where I want them to be, and I just started laying them out here, they would become gigantic. Not what we want. I want this to fit. I put a lot of work into this, and I want it to be just as I planned it. This is my own design. I did use these stitch patterns from the Japanese stitch dictionary, I think it's called. I'll put a link to it down in the description of this video. And while you're listening to me and watching me do this, I do have a group on Facebook that you can join if you want to, where we talk about all the technical aspects of knitting. And I have a group on Facebook. They're both called Knitting with Suzanne, and you're free to join both. In fact, I would love it if you did. I like to hear from my viewers. So you can see that looks pretty good. And as I said, I continually tweak it. I'll be out here tweaking this probably in the middle of the night. I'll come out and peek and see how it's doing, and I'll be tweaking it, but it's looking pretty good. Just a lot of padding. And that's with me being super careful. So you can imagine how much padding you'd have to do if you weren't careful. So let's do the sleeves. We're going to move right over here and work on the sleeves. I do them the same way. Here's one sleeve. Remember, we folded it up this way. And it's gotten a little bit bigger too, which is to be expected with cables. We just want to contain it within our lines. That's what the lines are for. And notice I'm not having to use pins or anything so far, because my edges, I had planned them, they're all knit stitches. They're stockinette, not knit, they're all stockinette, and they're just lining up very nice, because that's where I'm going to seam the two sides of the sleeve together. They're laying very flat, nothing's curling, so I don't need to put any pins. And this isn't going to go anywhere. It's not going to slide off of here. So no need for pins on this particular piece. Sometimes you do need pins. I just have those live stitches because it's going to be a saddle there. And this is partially embroidered also. I'll continue embroidering it after it's dry. And then I would lay the second sleeve on top. I'm not going to bore you with that part of the video because you saw me do it on the fronts. I'm going to lay it on this, right on top of here. And here in Bakersfield, where it's been over 100 degrees every single day for the last 2 months without a break, all I have to do is take this outside, and in a couple of hours it'll be dry. I don't have to worry about it molding. So we'll look at these again once they're dry. Okay, so this has been sitting outside in the sun for a couple of hours, nice and warm. You never want to leave your knitting out in the sun for very long because sun will damage wool. But just for a short time is okay to get it dry. So this is completely dry now. So I'm going to take it up, and we can see what the fabric looks like. It's actually much more malleable and soft, more soft than it was yesterday. So the pieces are very nice. Here's the back. Oh, I like it. So you can see now it is the size that it needs to be because that's where we put it to allow it to dry, and it won't change unless we get it wet again. And there you have it. That's how to wet block a sweater knit in pieces.